The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be? Me, you me, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, wasn't able to come chop it up with y'all yesterday. There was practice, padded practice. That was day 10 of camp. Today was day number 11. Much easier practice, more focus on special teams. Also, no pads, helmets and shells. But kind of pulling the reins back again. They play a game on Friday, so they're not going to go as hard this week. They're not going to beat the crap out of each other because they have an opponent that they can turn that aggression to on Friday night in the Cleveland Browns. So you're not going to have a lot of those, physically demanding, high-intensity practices this week. They're going to scale it back and get these guys ready for their opponent on Friday. But I talked about this over the weekend, specifically on Saturday when we had our initial roster conversation. I told you that, hey, this is the first week of the preseason. You can see the first game in the horizon, which means soon, and I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I said soon, they're going to release that unofficial depth chart. Now, you don't want to go overboard. We'll explain all the reasons as to why, but it's still something that's fun to look at and assess and break down. So we will take a look at that unofficial depth chart a little bit later on in the show. Before we get to that, I want to first start by going back to Sunday, day number 10 of practice, because remember when we left off at day number 9, which was on Friday, they had Saturday off, if you recall. There was a ton going on. It was an extremely physical practice. Things got really chippy, and there were a number of guys that either didn't finish practice, didn't practice at all, or injured themselves at that practice, and so we didn't know what their status was going to be moving forward and how severe these injuries may or may not have been. So Sunday gives context to today and moving forward, and just because they practice today doesn't mean that they're necessarily straight. We'll get into all of that. Let's first go back to day number 10, however. Padded practice. So they got the break on Saturday, come back, padded practice on Sunday. Much better day. Remember, day 9 was really rough. It might have been the worst day of practice for the offense. Maybe that Saturday where 10,000 people came out, that first Saturday, maybe that was the worst day the offense had, but this had to be up there, if not worse than that Saturday. So Friday's practice was rough. So it was a great bounce back for the offense on Sunday. Much sharper. At one point, you had EB showing love to the offensive line at one point in practice on Sunday after they had opened up about 3 or 4 massive holes during the span of about 3 or 4 plays as they moved the ball down the field. EB was excited about the offensive line in that period and gave them some love. All we hear about is him yelling and screaming and chastising and criticizing, but you don't usually hear when he's giving compliments. They leave that stuff out. So, him giving some love to the offensive line shows that they were putting in work. And, to take it a step further, Ron doubled down on that. And he was very complimentary of the offensive line during his press conference on Sunday. So he talked about the O-line and how he was really pleased with the effort they put forth and how they had a really strong day and that they're, going in the right direction. So, I've been an advocate and, sometimes I can be somewhat blind in my faith. And it's just because I'm an optimist. It's got to be to the point where there's no denying it. Like, I'm not going to tell you that the offensive line is going to suck if there's a chance. And a significant one, which I think there is, that they'll be solid. I'm not telling you they're going to be out here being one of the top, 5 or 7 or 10 units in football. I'm just telling you they're not going to be as bad as we were last year. And that, and not even that, because that's a very low bar. They're going to be, I think, when it's all said and done, an average NFL starting offensive line. And that's really all we need. You'd love to excel there, but you got to understand, we haven't put in the resources to excel. You can't go out on the, into the clearance rack and grab a right tackle, a starting right tackle, and expect to have extraordinary results. You can't go to that same clearance rack and get your starting center and expect to have extraordinary results. All right, you did the same thing with Charles Leno. You got him off of the clearance rack. The Bears were done with him, and he's your starting left tackle. It has been for the last 3 years now. But again, you can't expect extraordinary results with average players. So that's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for guys to come in and stabilize a group that was not good last year, that was unstable last year. From the snaps back to the quarterback, to the protection of the quarterback, to opening holes in the run game. We couldn't even run the football on 4th and inches or 4th and 1. Like that wasn't a guarantee for us like it had been in previous years. So I'm just looking for them to be a solid group. And I think they can do that. So it was good to hear them get some praise, because a lot of people have been shitting on them this entire, camp. And again, I've been one of those people that preach patience, because it's a brand new group. It's a brand new group. And you got to give them time. Unlike other positions where it's individualized, long as you do your job, I'm fine, right? The offensive line has to work together. There aren't many plays in which them working individually is all they have to do. They have to be on one accord on every single snap. So it was good to hear that. So let's go through some of the talking points for day number 10. We heard from Rivera, John Bates, Percy Butler, Kendall Fuller, Mason Brooks, and Nick Gates all on Sunday. So I'll give you a little tidbit from all of those pressers here in a second. But I just want to go through the itinerary from day number 10 and all of the notes that I took and things that I found interesting. So Curtis Samuel was one of the hot topics of discussion after Sunday's practice, because he left practice like 2 periods early. He practiced throughout the day, felt some tightness, went over to EB, let him know, bro, I'm tight. And EB was like, yeah, no, you're done. So he sat out the final 2 team periods of the day, which led a lot of fans to go jumping off the deep end like we always do. When Sadiq Charles got hurt, oh, he's so garbage, get him out of here, he can't stay healthy, cut him right now. No, what are you talking about? Stop. You didn't even know the extent of the injury. Stop. Right? Same with Curtis Samuel. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Relax. 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 So he was a little tight. They held him out of the rest of that practice. We'll talk about, was he in attendance in today's practice, day number 11. Logan Thomas with the calf injury. Remember, we had a slew of guys at after day 9, right? Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, who was the tight end? Curtis Hodges, right? We had the linebacker Cody Barton, and then we had Sadiq Charles still. So we had a number of guys dealing with something, and Emmanuel Forbes, if I didn't already mention him. So we had a number of guys dealing with something. And so I was like, I'm interested to see with this day off, because Ron tried to downplay just about every single one of those injuries. Like, yeah, we'll see. We'll reevaluate them. We'll see. They should be ready to go. Give them that extra day off. And they should be. I was like, I want to see how many of these dudes out here. Ron talking all that shit. Let me see how many of them come out here. So Logan, no. He was not out there. Sadiq Charles stretched with the team and got some indie work in. He got some indie work in, but he didn't get any of the first team reps. He didn't do anything with the team, no team reps, all individual work. Okay. So Sadiq they're going to be really cautious with him, is essentially what Ron said. They're going to be cautious with him. Emmanuel Forbes got indie work, no team periods in day number 10. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. No teamwork, all indie work. for Emmanuel Forbes in day number 10. Curtis Hodges was back after some tightness in day number 9. He was back, full participant. So that's good news because the tight end, like it did last year, kind of got thin. Remember how thin we were at the tight end position last year with all the injuries. Having Logan Thomas go down, or not go down, having him be out of practice and not having Hodges, and you're already down, a tight end already in Armani Rogers. They've signed another guy a while ago, but you don't want to start digging into that bag too deep, Then you find yourselves having to go out on the streets, bring somebody else in here, and it's just a mess. You just want the guys that you have here to be healthy and play and get the reps, because these are the guys that you think are going to be on the team and that are going to be contributing for you. So you want those guys getting the reps, not somebody else. So it was good to have him back out there. Cody Barton was a full participant. Remember I told you of all the injuries, his seems the most benign. I expect him to be back out there. He was full participant with the hip flexor in day number 10. As you get into some specifics of what was said or some things that were done out on the field, Khaleke Hudson showed some explosion in one-on-one drills. So one of the highlights of day number 10 was individual one-on-one situations with the linebackers, safeties, and the running backs. So obviously pass pro is important when you're on the field as a running back. You got to be able to pick up blitz and linebackers and safeties and things of that nature. And so they have these one-on-one drills simulating that. And Khaleke Hudson, how long have I been telling y'all, this is part of the problem I've had with the staff, is because as a coach, your job is to figure out what guys do best and put them in those situations. And even if you got to go out of your way to create a package for a guy that has a unique skill set like Khaleke Hudson, because when he came out of Michigan, he was one of those rover type safety hybrid linebackers that was great around the line of scrimmage, could run enough to be in coverage, but he was an excellent blitzer, always in the backfield. And I said, you have to find ways to get him on the field and get him going downhill as a blitzer. I said I wanted to see a little bit of that from Jamin Davis as well. Utilize that speed, get him unblocked, or find ways that he can open up and show that 4.4 speed. Same with Khaleke Hudson. Let him show that 4.5 speed. And for whatever reason, we just have never seen Khaleke in that role. And then when he gets an opportunity against Dallas in Week 18, what is he doing? Flying around, making a bunch of tackles, and making a name for himself. I swear he did the same thing when he got that opportunity in 2021 against Carolina. Remember, was it Carolina? Or I think it was Seattle. Cole Holcomb was out. He got to play, and I think he had like 15 tackles in that game. Every time he gets an opportunity, I just swear he goes out there and he's flying around. But that's just me. I would put him in situations where I'm trying to get after the quarterback. I want to be, have speed on the field. I want guys that can be aggressive and find a way to. Khaleke Hudson's one of those dudes, and he proved it again. He won 2 reps in a row, and I mean, he blew past these guys according to the reports. Brian Robinson on one, and I want to say the other was against. I don't think it was Antonio Gibson. I think it was. I want to say it was Williams that he blew past on the other one. So. I just would like to see him get more opportunities in those situations. Another thing that I want to talk about from Sunday's practice, the kicking competition to me really isn't a competition. Now, the games are going to cement that, right? These preseason games, I think, are going to cement that. All Sly has to do is make his kicks. And he's been the more consistent kicker throughout camp. And Sunday, I thought, was like the exclamation point. It's like, we already know Badgley's leg isn't as strong as Sly's, but so they had a 2-minute period where they just nothing but 2-minute offense. And the offense moved the football down the field, and they weren't able to punch it in, but they were able to get in the field goal range. And it was right around 50 yards or so. And they sent Sly out first to attempt the field goal to cap off the drive, and he made his. They sent Badgley out to attempt that same field goal, and it was short. From 50 yards. Like, what are we talking about here? Now, Badgley is way more accurate on extra points. We had this conversation. We did the comparison already, and he's missed like 6 extra points in his career. Like he's like 145 of 151 or some craziness. It's like he's hitting at a 97% clip. He doesn't miss extra points very often. Meanwhile, that is the Achilles heel of Joey Slye. Now, we heard from Slye and Badgley today. We'll talk about that a little bit more. You can put a pin in that if you'd like. But I'm just telling you, of the two, Slye is the guy. I never really questioned that. I told you I wasn't really moved when Badgley was brought on board. But for a dude with a limited range, boy, he is not lacking for confidence. That's one thing I like about Badgley. But I still don't want him anywhere near my team because if you, again, in this league, in this day and age in the NFL, you got to have a big leg. And Slye has that. He checks all the boxes. He's just got to be more consistent on extra points. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But that was something else that stood out from day number 10 of camp for me. Here's something that I want to talk about. And I guess we can just go ahead and start talking about these pressers from day number 10. Rivera spoke. And a lot of what he had to say was heaping praise on guys because they bounced back from a rough, day 9 on Friday, chippiness, maybe losing your cool. He talked about, immaturity a little bit, showing its head. And then you had some injuries and the offense was just putrid. So there were a number of things that he wanted to see cleaned up. He wasn't, super upset after Friday's practice. He wasn't annoyed or anything like that. And he wasn't even really that concerned like a lot of people were. He's like, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll be fine, And I think that was somewhat validated in day number 10. And he talked about the offensive line and how they were able to kind of, show some life, show that they're trending in the right direction, start to, win their fair share of the battles. Look, you're not going to beat this defensive line up too often, but you should be winning your fair share of battles too. And they seem to be doing a little bit more of that in day number 10. He talked about Alex Arma again. So the conversation surrounding Logan Thomas came up. Obviously, he did not practice. And then it came up again today. And I'll elaborate on that when we get to day number 11. But, he was talking about Logan and, the tight end position because he was specifically asked about the tight end position's growth and how he's feeling about that position in particular. And I think part of the reason that question was even asked was because of all the injuries. And this was a position that did not really produce at a high level last year. And I think a lot of that falls in the lap of former offensive coordinator Scott Turner and him just not utilizing that position group enough. Now, again, we were so banged up there and a lot of guys didn't get work during camp. It made it so easy for you to ignore that position. Logan Thomas coming off of a major injury. He said he didn't feel like himself until week 10 last year. That's the Eagles game on Monday night. So the first, let's call it the first two, I don't want to say half. It's a little bit over half of the season, 3/5, we'll call it. The first 3/5 of the season, Logan Thomas didn't even feel like himself. So I'd say that there's a little bit of concern that for an offense that is really built around the quick passing game and the tight ends, because we saw how valuable the tight end position was in Kansas City. The assumption is it's going to be the same thing here. And we've been hearing all offseason how this is a tight end friendly offense and how the tight ends are going to be much more involved. And now Logan Thomas is hurt. Curtis Hodges is hurt. You don't have, a guy that we were all excited about in Amani Rodgers. And so now you're looking at the position and saying, hey, are they okay? Are they good? And Ron was like, yeah, no, they're fine. And he keeps bringing up Alex Arma. He brought up, again, unsolicited. No one said Alex Arma's name. Nobody brought him up. But for the 4th time or so this offseason, Ron has brought up Alex Arma's name and talked about his versatility and how he was able to take some of those reps at tight end and how he also is able to play what they call the U position, which I think is like an H-back. I think the U is more detached away from the line, right? He's not necessarily in the box, so you can move that you around and put him some of everywhere, and so he's been able to play that position for them. And Ron keeps bringing up Alex Arma. I'm telling you, I'm leaning towards him being on this roster. I think there's a spot because he does so much. He can be a fullback. He can be this detached you as a tight end. They've put him in so many different spaces. You can hand him the ball as a running back. I've seen them do that in practice where they've given him fullback dives and things of that nature, and he's run it in. That's a staple of the Chiefs offense is on, third and fourth and short situations. It's a quick halfback dive, right? Or fullback dive, excuse me. And they'll hand it off to the fullback real quick and have him plow through there and get the first down. So I just think Alex Arma is going to be on this roster. I don't know. I just got a hunch. I could be wrong. But especially with some of the injuries to the tight end position, I think their comfort level with Alex Arma they love that positional flex. I know you guys hate that phrase, but I think his positional flex is what ultimately going to end up having him be on this roster. I really, truly believe that. So John Bates spoke about, and Ron talked about having it be a nice day for the quarterbacks, Sam Howell in particular, and how he was able to really be more confident, accurate, all of that good stuff. We'll talk more about the quarterbacks. I think that conversation really came up today in day number 11, and Ron kind of elaborated on that. And I think something that I haven't brought up, but I think it's another indicator as to where this thing is heading, which I've said this all along. You guys have said it, but it's just another indicator. I think we've gotten to a point now where it's just a means to an end. Like we're eventually going to get to the point where they're going to announce this, but we're going to see. We're going to see that they're going to make him earn it, which they should. They shouldn't give him anything. Make him earn it. But John Bates said that he's worked on his route running, and how to get open, be more available for his quarterback. That's the thing he worked on the most in the offseason. He feels like he's improved on the most. He's like, I want to improve in every facet of the game, every aspect. I want to be better, but specifically, I want to be more able to get open and separate. And I've been working on that, and I think I've gotten better at that. We'll see. I don't see John Bates as a big separator, but we'll see. I know John can catch the ball. I do know that. But I don't see John Bates as a big separator. But if this offense is going to be tight end friendly and they're going to give the tight ends an opportunity to catch the ball, Bates may get more opportunities, and I would love to see what he does with them. So good for him. He said that the offense is starting to gel. And that's the same thing Curtis Samuel said. We're starting to gel. We're starting to get on the same page. We're starting to get in sync, man. He said it's been rough because it's been so much, and we've had to try to really digest everything and kind of do it on the fly. And we've had our bumps in the road, but he's like, I feel like we're turning the corner now. So Bates sounds like Curtis Samuel, who sounds like the offensive line, who all are starting to say the same thing. We're starting to make some hay, right? We're starting to gain some traction with this offense. So that's good to hear. Percy Butler, this is a guy that I keep bringing up, and I won't let his name just be, buried with all of the safeties. And again, new shiny toy alert. Quan Martin's here, and everybody's looking at Quan, and I'm like, don't forget about Percy Butler, because I think what's going to ultimately, and now Quan is a different animal, and they spent the second-round pick on him. All right, Percy Butler's a fourth-round pick, so there's a big difference. One's a day 2 pick. The other is a day 3 pick, and they are very high on Quan Martin, and he's going to play very early on, right? Which is the opposite of Percy Butler, who didn't play a ton last year, But, again, I've said this about Percy Butler, and Ron has brought him up when he talks about, some of these 3 nickel look, 3 safety looks and getting guys on the field. And Butler's going to be a guy that gets on the field. And that Dallas game did a lot. You know, it's funny because often we don't look at the final game of a lost season. We don't really associate that last game with carryover momentum to the next season. Rarely do we do that, right? If you had a great game and a meaningless game in week 18, 2 years ago, Bobby McCain had 2 interceptions against the Giants, including that pick 6. In a meaningless week 18 game against the Giants. They sucked, we sucked. They started Jake Fromm. They were quarterback sneaking from their own 3-yard line. Just a lot of foolishness, right? And Bobby McCain had the pick 6. Bobby McCain had the other pick and had himself a whale of a ball game against a terrible quarterback that's now currently on our roster. Go figure. And I was like, I hope that he's still not here after that. Like, I like Bobby, and I told y'all I'm cool with Bobby. You know, I don't have a Bobby, but I didn't want him starting. That was my problem. Like, we could do better than Bobby. And, of course, he was back after that. But there was no carryover, you know. It's amazing, though. Khalid has carryover from that game. Percy Butler has carryover from that game. Sam has carryover from that game. Jahan has carryover, but, you know, Jahan had more of a profile. He throughout the season, he made more plays, but that was a nice game for him at the end to kind of show like what he's fully capable of. I know there are a number of Cowboys fans after that game say, okay, yeah, he's a real one, right? Like, they didn't know before because they didn't see him. He got hurt in that first Cowboys game. He caught the corner route against them for the touchdown, and then later on in that game, he got hurt, and then he missed the next 5 games. So the Eagles really didn't get because the first game back was against the Eagles. You know, he got hurt in week 4 against Dallas, and then he didn't come back till week 10. So he missed weeks 5 through 9. Week 10 was his first game back, but it was like just working them back. He had 1 catch maybe in that game. So they really didn't get the full Jahan, you know, Dotson experience like the Giants did. The Giants got blessed twice, not once, but twice. By the time they saw him for the first time, he was healthy and raring to go, and he kicked their ass in that game. He had that's the touchdown with the spin move and send it to overtime. And then you had the Jahan with the big catch down the field. You know, we didn't get any damn points out of it, but Jahan lit them up both times. So, and I think he had a touchdown grab in that second Giants game as well. So he was getting busy. But that Dallas game, he was really good too. And so there's a lot of carryover. Benning Patoa, he had a really good game. I think that's part of the reason he's still here. Like, that game was big for a lot of players. So Percy Butler was one of those players. And it's amazing what a game like that can do for your confidence if you're lacking in that department, because Khalid Hudson was lacking the confidence. I'm not saying Percy Butler was lacking confidence, but sometimes when you're a rookie, you just need to know that you can play at this level. And I think that Cowboys game probably opened his eyes like, man, I can do this shit, man. And so I'm looking for a Defoe-like jump out of him. Like, I think everybody's looking at Quan Martin, and I hope it's him. But I'm looking at Percy, and I said, I think it's him. Because this is year 2 for him. And he was like, yo, the game was moving at 100 miles an hour last year. When the offense had the ball, my shit was spinning, bro. I didn't know what the hell was going on. He said, now the game is slowed down for me. Like, I get it. I see it. I know what offenses are trying to do to us. I know how we are looking to combat that. I'm just in a much better headspace. I can go out and play ball. We know Percy's fast. We know he can run. Now you get to see it. Same thing with Defoe. We knew he could run, but we didn't know if he could play. Everything slowed down, and we saw the speed last year. I think you're going to see the same thing with Percy Butler, and he's been saying that. Kendall Fuller talked about the growth of the corners, Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, even though it's been a small sample size, what he's seen from him since, the start of OTAs and to now, and just talked about the growth of some of these young players. And he talked about being a veteran. A lot of people now I told you we're a relatively young team. So a lot of people look at Kendall Fuller as that wildly cagey vet. It's crazy when you think about it. Kendall Fuller is only 28 years old. He's not seriously old, but for us as fans, you're thinking about rookie contract Kendall. He leaves in a trade, comes back, and now he's in year 4, the final year of a 4-year deal, and you're like, shit, Kendall been in the league. How long has Kendall been in the league, right? But he's 28 years old, and he still got some good football. And he just talked about, the transition from athleticism when you first get in the league and relying on that to film study and taking care of your body and needing to do all of those little things as your career progresses. You can't just get by with athleticism. Now you have to rely on being smarter than your opponent. Now you have to rely on taking care of your body so you're fresher than your opponent. And he talked about all those things. I just love Kendall Fuller, man. I'm a big Kendall Fuller fan. You need guys like him on your squad because he's going to school all the young players. Even though he's not that old himself. Jonathan Allen was talking about it. He's like, bro, I'm 7 years into the game now. Like, it's crazy. It doesn't feel like it, but this year 7 for me. So I got to take care of my body now. Like, it's funny hearing these dudes. They still young, but you get up there, man. The NFL ages you quick. You don't do the right things, it'll age you fast. It'll age you right out of the league. Mason Brooks. It was fun listening to Mason Brooks. I'm rooting for him. So I'll say it this way. If we were on Hard Knocks this year, Mason Brooks is the guy that they would have followed, I think. And to see if he would have made the team as an undrafted rookie. He would have been the guy I think they would have shadowed. And they would have some good footage. They would have had some good footage because there was the one situation where he kicked Fedarian Mathis's ass, and they made Fedarian do it over because he got his ass mollywopped so damn bad. They was like, nah, bro, you got to do that shit again. And that's not a great drill for Fedarian Mathis or John Ridgway. They're not pass rushers. So that's unfortunate. But Mason Brooks kicked his ass twice in a row. And I remember telling you guys that the tight end / offensive line coach was so excited. He was jumping up and down. We're talking about like a 65-year-old man. He should not be jumping up and down, but he was. And they said he might have, tried to sprain or pull a hammy or something, jumping up and down, Juan Castillo. But Mason Brooks just talked about, look, man, I'm just happy to be here, bro. I'm living out a dream. This has been fun, and I'm gonna just continue to take advantage of all the opportunities that I get. I can't wait to play in this preseason game. This is gonna be a blast. So I'm rooting for Mason Brooks. I'm rooting for him because something tells me that he's more ready, and he's got a lot of work to do. And I think the depth chart, again, it's unofficial, and you don't want to put too much stock into it, but I think the depth chart kind of tells you that. And Ron even said, look, he's got a lot of work to do, but they like him. Worst case scenario, because I still don't think there's a way he can make the team. Because much like a lot of these young guys, there's just nowhere for him to play or, help you. If you have injuries, you're not looking to put Mason Brooks in the game. But they're gonna try to keep him on the practice squad if they can. If he plays too well, they may not be able to sneak him onto the practice squad. So they're probably hoping that he plays okay, but doesn't destroy the opponent, because if he does, they're gonna have to make a tough decision. Again, there are going to be some tough decisions that have to be made, and you're just hoping to get your stuff back. But I enjoyed listening to Mason Brooks talk, man. You could tell he's just like a big ball of positivity and a guy that's just like, look, man, you can't rain on my parade. I'm in the NFL right now, so it ain't nothing you can say to me. And then Nick Gates, he just talked about the cohesion up front and how it's still a work in progress. He's like, yeah, man, look, it's a lot of moving parts, brand new offense, a lot of pieces being thrown at us, and I think we've handled it well, but we can be better, and we're continuing to grow every single day. And I feel like we're getting to the point now where we're starting to understand each other, and starting to know when this guy does this is how he's going to react, and this is how I can react. So, these are the things that you only get through practice. You know, you only get through experience, going through those battles. And I think the preseason is going to help them even more, you know, because I expect them, you know, we're going to talk about the preseason schedule because I've already told you I expect the offense to play a lot. Listening to Ron, that Ravens game is going to be really interesting because that was the first question I asked you guys. Like, that work that they get next week during, you know, the joint practices with the Ravens, going to be really interesting because it could determine how much they feel like they need to put their starters on the field. I already know Harbaugh is going to use that week of practice and then just not play his starters. That's usually his move. But because the offense in Baltimore has been struggling so bad because they got a new offense, there's no more of the Greg Roman offense that they were so comfortable with and had really designed around Lamar Jackson's skill set. Now they're trying to open up the pass game. They got all these receivers now. And so they're trying to move away from the ground and pound approach that they had to more of a quarterback friendly, you know, get the ball to these skill guy type, you know, offense, and it needs work. So maybe they will play. That's going to be interesting next week. But Gates pretty much said, "Look, you know, we're getting better. That's all that matters to me is that they're getting better." So day 10 padded practice really went well. Really went well all around. You get to day number 11, which is today. So helmet and shells, hats and shells, or just shells. They call them just shells, right? Your helmet and your pads. But we heard from Ron Rivera, Joey Slide, Michael Badgley, and Jahan Dotson was mic'd up. Now, you should have seen this by now. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't, but we're going to talk about that. He was mic'd up. You know, Jahan is a funny dude, but when you got the mic and they know you hot, right? They know you the feds, or they call you all kinds of stuff when you got the mic on. People don't like talking to you, right? They try to stay away from you because they don't want to get, you know, slip up and get caught saying something they ain't got no business saying. And so people like to just steer clear of you. And it's your job to let everybody know that you mic'd up. Antonio Gibson loves to do the whole, "Hey, man, did you take care of that rash thing?" That's his favorite thing to do. Somebody must have done that to him. And I think I recall somebody doing that to him when he was mic'd up once. I want to say it was either his rookie season or the second year. So that's his thing. That's 2 years in a row now that somebody's had the mic on. I think JD had it on last year, and he came over and did the whole, "Hey, did you take care of that rash you had?" So he did it to Jahan, and Jahan was like, "Hey, man, get out of here with that. You know, don't even come over here with that foolishness, man." But he was ragging on Curtis Samuel for his practice swag. He had on a gray undershirt, a short sleeve gray undershirt under his practice jersey, and Jahan just won't go on for it. He's like, "Bro, really?" He's like, "That's nasty right there, man. That's disgusting. Your swag is disgusting." And Curtis knew what he was talking about right away, the shirt. So he knew he was flagrant. He knew he was out of line. Curtis was like, "I don't care nothing about that." He's like, "Bro, nah, I'm not gonna let it slide, bro. That's disgusting. You got to be better than that." So he has some jokes, you know what I mean? But he don't say a whole lot, you know. He's a reserved dude. That's just his personality. So anyway, that's that. Let's talk about the particulars from practice today. So what I want you to keep in mind is that today was not a walkthrough, but it wasn't the same level of intensity that you had gotten with the padded practices. So understand, guys that may have been injured, who haven't really been participating, are more likely to participate in a practice setting like day number 11 than day 10, where there's pads, full go, everybody's practicing at 100% speed, tempo. That's not what 11 was. 11 was scaling back. You know, you don't have on pads, so everybody stay up. Ron referenced 10-10-10, which is 10 offensive plays, 10 defensive plays, 10 special teams plays. They did that today. So it was a more low intensity practice, which would allow guys who are nursing an injury to participate. So when I tell you about some of these players that participated, take that with a grain of salt. So let's get into that first. So the guy that we care about the most with the injuries to this point is Emmanuel Forbes. So he was back in team drills. Remember, in day number 10 on Sunday, he participated in indies only, individual drills, no team drills. So today he was back in team drills. Now, I want you to take this with a grain of salt that he was back in team drills because, again, there were no pads. You know, the level of competition wasn't as great per se. And again, the intensity of practice wasn't at its peak like it had been the previous, 3 or, 4 or 5 practices. That said, he shows no ill effect of the strain or whatever he had, the twinge of discomfort that caused him to leave practice on Friday. He showed no signs of it. I watched him move around, plant, run, for about a good 2 minutes at practice today. He looked fine to me. But again, that doesn't mean anything. And the fact that this was not a padded practice, it wasn't a high energy, high tempo practice, I'm still a little bit cautious about him. I'll just say that. But he looks good. I'll just say that. He doesn't look like he's compromised in any way, shape, or form. So when he told us after practice, I'm good, it's nothing to worry about, he might have been legitimately saying that, not just saying it because he was disappointed and didn't want anybody to worry. I think he legitimately knew, hey, I'm good. So Curtis Samuel, if you recall, at the end of day 10, had a little tightness. So Kurt Cole took some reps towards the end of practice today. So he did jump into some team drills towards the end of practice. But he did not practice for the vast majority of the day. Got a little indie work, but for the most part, stayed out of the team drills and then jumped in at the end. So I'd say that meeting I had with the injury reaper went really well, and I'm just going to say, I think things have taken a turn for the better from an injury standpoint for us. I'll just leave it at that. Logan Thomas did not practice again. So for those of you keeping score at home, he sustained the injury in day number 9, which was Friday. Did not practice day 10, did not practice day 11. They had a day off on Saturday. So that's 3 days in a row of rest that he's had and hasn't been able to come back out. So now people are starting to get concerned. Ron, so let's talk about that because I told you to put a pin in that. So you can take the pin out now. So Ron essentially said today, look, Logan's old, man. Like, he didn't even try to sugarcoat it. Like, he's an older player. And knowing that he's coming off of a season, and last year he wasn't injured, but the year before he was, and he was still kind of dealing with the remnants of it last year, we want to make sure that we take care of him. Like, we don't push him too hard, that we don't put him in a compromising situation that re-aggravates, a previous injury or, has something that ends up being a nagging injury all year long. We're trying to nip it in the bud now, which is now is the time, right? If you're going to rest him, if you're going to try to get him healthy, now is the time to do it. So he's out of practice, and there's really no timeline for him. Same can be said for Sadiq. Ron was asked about Sadiq and any timeline for him as far as when he'll be back. So let's just talk about Sadiq Charles real quick. So Sadiq got work with the first team today. He was back in there a little bit. Chris Paul took the vast majority of the first team reps, but Sadiq got in there, snuck in some first team reps. Again, keep in mind what type of practice it was. It was not a full padded practice. It was not high intensity. It was not up tempo. So Sadiq could sneak in there if he, if the what was his? Was his a calf as well? I think his was a calf too. Let me check my notes. Yeah, calf strain. So he could theoretically get out there, move around a little bit. It was good to see him back out there. with the first team as well. Because so many people, what I find myself being a lot of times is I like going against the grain. And so many people have quit on Sadiq Charles already. They're done with him. And I understand, but I'm not quitting on him. And I made a joke. I hear your jokes. I made a joke about him in the offseason. I'd like for him to prove me wrong. I'd like for him to prove all of us or most of us wrong out there who doesn't think he can get it done and can't stay healthy. I'd like for him to prove us wrong. It'd be very beneficial to the movement if he were able to stay healthy. And even if he doesn't win the starting left guard job, just be healthy and available so that if something were to arise, he'd be available for us. And if he steps in there, he could play well and stay healthy. That's what we need. And we're going to talk about that in a second when we get to the unofficial depth chart and why that's important. But he was back in the fold today with Sadiq Charles on a full capacity. So good for him. Again, understand what type of a day it was, but nonetheless, can't be mad at that. Tress Way experienced some tightness in his lower back. So Dax Milne is the emergency holder on the team, which I learned today because he was holding extra points and field goals and things of that nature. But they brought in, 2 punters and a long snapper. So everybody's like, what's going on there? And now it makes sense. Tress Way had, and Ron, it doesn't sound like it's anything serious. But again, dealing with the older player in Tress Way, just want to make sure everything's straight. No reason to push the envelope if he's not, feeling like himself. Just hold him out. Ron said he should be good to go for the first preseason game. So I'm not tripping. Troy Apke ended up on IR today with a shoulder injury. And it makes a little bit of sense because they had signed a safety the other day and they had let go of a guard. And you were thinking, well, why'd they go with a safety if they're getting rid of a guard? Like normally, like for instance, when David Bada tore his tricep, they put him on IR and they brought in a defensive lineman to take a defensive lineman's place, right? Like you would think it would be a one for one, right? Well, they release guard Kiefer Sutherland, all right, and they bring in a defensive back, and you're going, why they bring in another safety? We got enough safeties. Why'd they bring in another DB? Well, Troy Apke getting injured makes a ton of sense. You need somebody to eat up those special teams reps. You need somebody to be able to do some of those things for you in the preseason. You're not going to be playing starters. You need somebody to take those reps. So it makes sense now. It makes a ton of sense why they did what they did. So Joshua Kalu being signed here as a defensive back. They had already signed a safety, and they bring in Joshua Kalu. It makes sense. It all makes sense now. So we heard from Ron, Joey Slye, Michael Badgley. I already talked about Jahan being mic'd up. So Ron in particular today, so these are the topics that I want to focus on because I thought they were the ones that, for me at least, drew the most interest. He talked about the quarterback position because Jacoby Brissett got some reps with the first team for the first time. I want to talk about that explicitly. He talked about Benjamin St-Juste quite a bit today, and he talked about Khaleke Hudson too. So I want to touch on all 3 of those topics, but I want to first start with the quarterback discussion. Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, and this quarterback battle. Now, this is how you know that this is not a real battle, right? Because, and I thought somebody, I don't know exactly who it was, wish I could remember who it was so I could give them the credit, but somebody phrased the question beautifully today, where they kind of set the table, and Ron did not have a great answer, to be honest with you. That question, I think, kind of caught him off guard because they phrased it so well. They used Ron's own words against him, and he had no answers for it, which when you get caught with your pants down, what are you going to do? You just cover up your genitals, and you try to get your pants up as fast as you can, and that's what Ron tried to do, right? But he got caught with his pants down. So that reporter pretty much said, hey, Jacoby got some first team reps. today. What was the thought process behind that? And, Ron said, at some point he's going to be working with the ones, so just wanted to get him a little bit of work, right? But that opened up the door in Pandora's box, because if this were a real competition, Jacoby Brissett, if you recall, when we were having a competition back in 2021 with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke, they were splitting reps with the ones. Now, everybody that was out there was like, yo, this is basically Ryan Fitzpatrick's job. But Ron, because he was scarred from 2020, which we're about to go to in a second, and how that all turned out, he wanted to make sure that he was giving equal reps to these quarterbacks and making it feel like a real competition. But we all knew what it was. It's a good thing that he did do that, because 2 possessions in to the first game of the season, Taylor Heineke had to get out there. And it's great that he had opportunity to play with the first team during the summer, because if he didn't, who knows if he would have been able to come in and play well like he did. But anyway, the reporter then, said, well, that's interesting, because back in 2020, when you essentially gave Dwayne the job, it turned out to be a mistake, and you said that it was a mistake that you didn't have it be an open competition, and that you didn't give the backup at the time, which was Kyle Allen, any reps. And so it kind of put you in a situation where you felt like if you had it all over to do again, you would have, divvied up the reps in a competition a little bit more. And so he said, this feels a lot like 2020 and not like 2021. And I'm like, he kind of got your ass there, Ron. Because that's what I've been saying. Like, this feels like he's trying to project 2021, but this feels like 2020, right? He doesn't want to go out and say it's Sam Howell's job, because he wants him to earn it, which is something he did not make Dwayne do. So he's trying to stay away from that. But this doesn't feel like 21, because Sam Howell is taking all of the first team reps. Jacoby Brissett is getting no first team reps. His first team reps came today. We're 11 days into camp, and it's his first time getting first team reps all summer long. Does that sound like a quarterback competition to you? Because it doesn't to me. Now, John Kahn, which is why I think Ron really likes John, because John will come in, and after somebody creates a mess, John comes in with that thick bounty roll. The one they show in the commercial where they just put it down and it soaks all of the liquid up. John Kahn will come in after one of these reporters comes and makes a big ass mess, and he'll just bounty that bitch up. And so after Ron was like kind of, a little bazardy after that whole exchange, because Ron's response was like something to the effect of, well, they got work in the offseason. It didn't make any sense. Like, Ron, what does all the quarterbacks getting work in the offseason have to do with training camp? If it's a competition, you should still be giving Jacoby Brissett first team reps. So you telling me, yeah, they both got plenty of work in the offseason. So no, that doesn't suffice for an answer. But that's okay. If that's what you're going with, look, he caught you. Just say, hey, you got me, bro. Just dap him up and say you got me and just keep it pushing. So John Kahn is like, well, because Jacoby Brissett is a veteran, do you feel like he doesn't need as many reps? And I was like, yeah, that's the answer I was looking for. Thank you, John. That's why I give you those exclusives, bro. That's why I rock with you. So he ran with that whole angle, like, yeah, Jacoby's a veteran. We know what he's capable of, so he doesn't need as many reps. Hey, look, man, whatever you got to tell yourself to make you sleep better at night. All right. So, again, this is not a real competition. Unless Sam Howell absolutely wets the bed. All right. To the point where he's holding back the entire team collectively with his play. He's the starting quarterback. It's just a formality at this point. So I did want to talk about that, because I thought today was pretty telling, and some of the answers we heard pretty telling. And we already know, we've been saying this all offseason, all of us as fans. There are probably a few out there that think Jacoby Brissett had a shot. He doesn't. We know why he was brought here. he talked about Benjamin St. Juste, did Ron Rivera, and he said that he's shown a ton of growth this offseason. We heard from Juice after day 9 of practice, and he talked about watching film on some of the corners that he respects in the game and trying to implement some of those things into his game. And he talked about being in year 3 of Jack's scheme and how much more comfortable he is, how playing multiple positions within the defense is giving him a greater knowledge of what he needs to do, and not only what he needs to do, but what the players, and this is what Kendall Fuller talks about all the time. The more positions you play, because Kendall Fuller has played every single position on the back end of the defense. So he can tell you what everyone's responsibility is. And that's why he's so smart. That's why I love Kendall Fuller. Don't you dare throw a wide receiver screen to his side. He's going to snuff that shit out. You know why? Because Kendall Fuller's a smart football player. And Benjamin St. Juste, I think, is getting to that point now because he's now played both the nickel and boundary. He's so much more comfortable playing both. But he also, because playing both of those positions forces you to learn what other guys are doing around you, because it's not the same for being outside when you've got the out of bounds line as another defender. You're inside. It's a whole new world in there. And so you're relying on linebackers now. You're relying on that safety. You're relying on a little bit more help from other guys that if you're a boundary corner, you're not really relying on them as much. So, Ron talked about how all of that stuff you can start to see show in the form of confidence out on the field. Like Juice is playing at a different level. And Ron confirmed it today. And the unofficial depth chart, I won't say confirms it, but it lends credence to the conversation. This is one we had probably right before training camp started. And I don't think we've rehashed this until this point. But we talked about, we got all these corners. Where are we going to play them? And I told y'all from the word go, Jump Street, I said, Kendall Fuller ain't moving off that right cornerback spot. All right, Kendall Fuller ain't moving. He's going to be your starting, RCB. And I said Emmanuel Forbes will be your LCB, right? Left cornerback. So I said that leaves Benjamin St. Juste going back inside to the slot. I wasn't a big fan of it, but we'll see what happens. Generally, big corners don't excel inside in the slot because that's where all the small, shifty, jitterbug receivers go, and it's easy to get broken off in there. But I will say, Benjamin St. Juste does have good short area quickness. All right. Now he can be very handsy, very, very, and maybe that's better suited for inside where there's a little bit more traffic. Maybe you're able to get away with it a little bit more than on the outside where it's easy for you to be spotted. But we're going to see if that transition, because he's going to be your starting nickel. All right. If on the very first play of the game, the Arizona Cardinals come out in a 3 wide receiver set, Benjamin St. Juste more likely than not going to be on the field. So he talked about, Juice and his comfort level in the system, the confidence he sees him playing with, and how that allows Jack to maybe do some other things. We'll see. I truly don't think you can really alter your defense too much with guys who can't run. Personally, we saw what happened when Jack tried to get aggressive against the Vikings last year, and he put Juice in the slot 1-on-1 against Justin Jefferson, and Justin took his ass uptown. And it wasn't because Juice had bad cut. Juice just couldn't run with Justin Jefferson. It's as simple as that. So that's why you go get an Emmanuel Forbes, if you ask me. Because, I think there's still limitations to what Juice can and can't do. But I love the confidence. And he plays with confidence. That's one thing that Juice has never lacked. So got an Khaleke Hudson mention from Ron today. And, he's been one of those dudes that's been, one of the heroes of the offseason, but he hasn't been touted as much as, say, Defoe last year. Kind of quietly, Khaleke has built a cult-like following. I think Ron, obviously his attention was grabbed last year. Khaleke got the game ball, one of the game balls against Dallas in that Week 18 victory. We all remember him talking about how, you can't replace hard work and things of that nature. And so I think that kind of grabbed Ron's attention about Khaleke and kind of changed the way he saw him. going into the offseason, and Khalid carried that momentum over into the OTAs, and Jack was talking Khalid Hudson up. Because I don't think Jack is a massive fan of Jamin Davis, to be honest with you. I think Jack feels like Jamin Davis has all the tools, but for whatever reason, they just can't get it out of him. So, if it were up to Jack, I think you're going to see Khalid Hudson a little bit more this year. Because I think Jack will tell you, you talk to Jack enough. Jack doesn't like giving up strategy and things of that nature, but Jack will tell you who he likes. He won't tell you players that he dislikes, but he'll tell you, I really like this guy. I really like what he's doing. And so Khalid's one of those dudes that Jack talked about earlier in the offseason. Like, yo, this dude's, taking some huge strides, and like the things that he's doing. And that's the same shit Jack said about Defoe last year. So Ron talked about the confidence. The same, and this has been my biggest thing with y'all is confidence. As a guy that at certain points in different sports either had or didn't have confidence, that shit is everything. When you feel like, hey man, you ain't got shit for me, I'm a beast. It's when I start doubting myself and I'm like, man, am I capable of like, we're human, right? Like, you have the utmost confidence when you're capable of doing something. When you aren't sure, you start to doubt yourself. When you start to doubt yourself, that's when you start to see hesitation. That's when you start to see mistakes happen. And I know it firsthand. So the biggest thing is confidence. You get to this level, you were the man in high school, you were the man in college, you get to the NFL, everybody's nice. All of a sudden, you're asking yourself, can I do this or not? Why haven't I gotten a shot? Why haven't I taken off? Am I not good enough? And, sometimes it just takes a game for you to go like, man, I can do this. Like Terry said, when he sat down on the Pivot Pod, he said, bro, week 1, I took the top off. First quarter, took the top off. I took it off again to start the third quarter and Case overshot me by like 5 yards, bro. I knew right then and there I can play in this league. Ain't no doubt. I'm running by these boys like I'm still at Ohio State. So it just takes one game, and I think that game for Khalid might have done it. Now he's like, nah, man, I can do this shit. And Ron's like, we've noticed he's playing with confidence, and we've taken notice that he's playing with confidence, and we've put more on his plate. We got him learning all 3 linebacker positions. So, look, we feel confident that we can put him out there just about anywhere. Because remember, I kept telling y'all, the only way Khalid gets on the field is if Jamin Davis goes out, which is why he played in Week 18. Jamin Davis was done for the season after the Cleveland game. They sat a bunch of dudes down who had nagging injuries. Jonathan Allen, Jamin Davis, I think Antonio Gibson. It was a bunch of dudes that they sat down in that last game. It was like, all right, y'all go ahead. Y'all been fighting through stuff. Y'all just, we'll go ahead and call it a season for y'all and let some of the young boys have it. And Jamin Davis was one of those guys that, got sat down for that final game because he was nursing an injury. And Khalid took over and had a hell of a game. But now it doesn't just have to be Jamin Davis. If Cody Barton's struggling with something or he's just not playing to their level, they could say, all right, Khalid, get out there. And that's great for Khalid. So just something I thought was interesting to mention as well. So Joey Sly and Michael Badgley spoke. There's not really much here. Joey sounds confident. And Badgley is funny because Badgley just he looks like one of those dudes that would get on my nerves. Like, because I don't think he lacks for confidence, but he's one of those dudes that thinks he's nicer than what he really is. And that's the thing that would probably bother me. Like, he's the dude on the court when you used to play ball back in the day that think he's so nice, he got handles. Then you pluck him and he want to call ball and you ain't touch him. You're like, come on, bro. That was clean. You just mad because I took your cookies, bro. You're not getting them back. And I ate them in your face. And now you want to scream, foul. Come on, man. That's what Michael Badgley strikes me as, You can't come up short from 50 and still smile in my face. Like, that's not cool. But Badge is not. I told y'all, anybody that gives themselves a nickname you got to look out for those type of people. Because usually when you give yourself a nickname, you're not lacking for confidence. But if you're going to give yourself a nickname, you better live up to it. Nicknames are supposed to be given organically. You're not supposed to come up with your own nicknames. But again, he named himself the Money Badger. If you're going to do that, you better be making some damn field goals and making some money. He has not been money, right? I can't see him winning this job. And I wouldn't be happy if he did. Because again, Sly's leg is so much bigger. And there's so much fundamentally wrong with Michael Badgley. For one, he doesn't have the leg, which is why he sucks as a kickoff guy. So that's another strike against him. Now, with this new rule, a guy like Badgley is actually maybe protected. Because if he can't get it into the end zone, if you have a team that doesn't really trust their returns, their kickoff return unit, they're just going to fair catch it and get it at 25 anyway, right? So a guy like Badgley might be saved by this new rule, but a guy like Sly's like, I'm not even tripping about that rule. I'm still going to kick the shit out of the football and kick it out the back of the end zone and just get the touchback anyway. It ain't gonna phase me one bit. I'm gonna just try to kick the shit out of the ball regardless. So a guy like Badgley might actually be helped by this new rule because now you're still getting the same intended result, which is the touchback, with a guy that can't really kick it deep enough that should warrant touchbacks. He shouldn't be warranting touchbacks by kicking the ball, to the 2-yard line. But if the other team is like, nah, we don't even want to try to return this, just take it at 2. You kick it that short though against Cordero Patterson or one of these explosive return men, that's dangerous. This is Sly's job. I'll just say that. So that was day number 11. But the biggest takeaway from today is the unofficial depth charts. So without any further ado, let's get to those and see what is going on there. So this is the offensive side of football. I'm pretty sure you know that. I don't have to explain that to you, but just for some of you out there who aren't aware, we're going to go offense, defense, and then specials to finish up. So nothing really earth-shattering here. I think the biggest so let's just go through this. And let me first say this. I need to say two things to you before we get like really, really in depth here. First thing, it's unofficial. And everyone will tell you, oh, the coaching staff doesn't have any input in this. I find that hard to believe, that something like a depth chart, they may not have put a ton of thought into it, but I find it hard to believe something like an unofficial depth chart. It's easy for them to just say, we don't have anything to do with it, so you can't ask them questions about it. But to me, this is too big of a deal for them to not at least look at it once and say, yeah, that's cool. You can put that out. Because if you don't have nothing to do with it, what stops me from taking Jahan Dotson and putting him as the third string and putting Marcus Kemp in as the starter? Like, I mean, they're not going to do that, clearly, right? But I'm saying, what's stopping me from doing that if they don't have nothing to do with it? Like, I find that hard to believe. So it is unofficial, and it is subject to change. Understand that. This is not even close to what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. To me, what this does, this is my form of the combine. Fast guys run fast, slow guys run slow. It's only when the opposite happens that we have a story. That's what these unofficial depth charts are for me. It's confirmation. It's everything that I thought, just seeing it visually. And then all it tells me is the guys that are, in fourth string and all that, they're probably not going to make the football team. That's all that says to me. All right. So that's number one. Number two, understand that a depth chart is not linear. What does that mean, Louie T? Understand that a depth chart is not linear. Okay. So what I am effectively saying to you is, if a depth chart was truly linear, if something happened to Nick Gates, then, or an even better example would be, if something happened to Andrew Wiley, Trent Scott is coming into the game at right tackle. If this were truly linear, starter, first string gets hurt, second string comes into the game. But as we all know, this is not linear. Okay? This is not linear. If something happens to Sam Cosmi, Aaron Montero is not coming into the game. Okay? They would move Andrew Wiley from right tackle to right guard and take Cornelius Lucas, who's your backup left tackle, and put him at right tackle before they put Aaron Montero. So what I'm telling you is, it's not a linear progression where if the first guy isn't in, the second guy automatically takes his spot. And I know you understand that concept, but that's why you have to be careful with these, because you have to understand that they're not linear. So with that said, with those two particulars out of the way, let's go ahead and talk this thing up. So there are no surprises on this first team look at the offense. Everything seems to be in its proper place. I know a lot of people want to talk about Sadiq Charles at left guard, but until Chris Paul officially unseats him, he's going to get every opportunity to be the starting left guard. So if Sadiq's ready for the game on Friday against the Browns, I wouldn't be shocked to see him out there with the first team offense. I wouldn't be shocked. Ultimately, every single one of these first team positions is locked in. Interesting that they put Alex Arma down here at fullback. He's the only fullback on the roster. Again, on the team website, he's listed as a running back. They don't even have him listed as a fullback, but he's a fullback. So it's interesting that they have him down here by himself. I keep talking about Alex Arma. I think he's going to make this football team. I've been telling you that for the last 2, maybe 3 weeks. I'm just going to keep telling you, I think Alex Arma is going to be on this football team, but we'll see. Something else Ron talked about, before I forget, the third quarterback spot. While we're here, while we're talking about this depth chart on the offensive side of football, you're looking at the 3 quarterbacks. It just jogged my memory. He did talk about that new rule that they're implementing this year, which will allow you to have a third quarterback active on game days and not have it count against your active game day roster, but he has to be on the roster. You're asking them to keep a third quarterback in Jake Fromm. I can't see them doing it. Ron said, now, we've done that before. You did it last year. We know. Nobody wants to keep 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. No one wants to waste a roster spot on a guy that usually doesn't see the field on game. Like, it's not often, even though it's a physical sport and you're 1 play away from your backup being in and you're 2 plays away from your third string quarterback being in, it's rare that teams get to that point in an NFL game. The 49ers having that happen on a big stage like the NFC Championship game kind of brought light to that situation, but it's rare that a team gets to their emergency quarterback in a game. So I can't see them keeping Jake Fromm on the roster. So I just wanted to put that out there. But he did talk about that being a possibility and liking the rule, but I can't see them keeping 3 quarterbacks. So nothing looks out of place with the first team. Okay. All of this looks what I like it should look to me. Here's where things get interesting on this second line. Now, again, it's not linear. So understand, if something were to happen to Curtis Samuel, Dax Milne isn't coming in as his replacement. They'll slide Jahan inside, and Diami will take his place as the outside receiver, and that's how they're going to roll. So, again, it's not linear. So don't let, he's backing him up. Don't let that stuff fool you. But this is where things get interesting. I talked about Trenton Scott, the backup right tackle that they have listed here. And I think there's an opening there for that 4th and final tackle position. Normally, you feel good about 3, and with Cosme's ability to play tackle, they may just feel like, no, we're good. If we have to, we can kick Sam back out. But the offensive line is just such a conundrum because you got Aaron Montero here, who I didn't think played all that poorly last preseason as your backup guard. But understand that the guy that doesn't win this left guard battle, Sadiq Charles or Chris Paul, that guy's going to be your primary backup. Whomever loses this battle is going to be the first guy in should something happen to one of your starting guards. Assuming that they're comfortable enough with Andrew Wiley at tackle, right? Assuming he's kicking ass out here. Because if he's not, the first thing you would do is then kick him inside, stick Cornelius Lucas at tackle, and you would just go about it that way. But assuming that Wiley's getting the job done out here, you don't want to touch it, then I think the first guy off the bench is going to be whoever doesn't win the left guard position. But look, seeing Aaron Montero's name as your backup guard, one of your backup guards, it's a little scary. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a little frightening. But the reason that is because when you look at some of these guys back here, like Ricky Stromberg, Braden Daniels, these are guys that we expect to make the team. Now, I keep talking about Braden Daniels. I don't know, but he's a 3rd-round pick, man, or a 4th-round pick, excuse me. I don't know if you're going to cut a 4th-round pick. I've seen it done, and it can be done, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it, So when you look at that situation, you're like, but again, I don't think that Aaron Montero, he's 2nd string, but I don't think he's making the team. Again, we'll see. Something else interesting to me is Curtis Hodges and Brandon Dillon back on his 4th line. Because if you're on the 4th line, you're not making the team. All right. Now, anything could happen. Mason Brooks could come out, kill it in the preseason, and overtake a bunch of dudes. But the likelihood is, if you on this back line, like, I'm not going to throw in the towel on Kashmir Allen or Mitchell Tinsley. But if you 4th string, you got a lot of ground to cover, man, in a very short amount of time, right? So it'll be tough for me to see. Like, Kaz Allen has a path to making a team if he goes out here and just absolutely shreds it on special teams as a return man, punts and kickoffs. He's got a direct path. Whereas Mitchell Tinsley, I don't think he's a core special teamer. He's not returning any punts or kickoffs. So that's something else Ron talked about today. So, because one of the conversations that we are currently having and that we're going to continue to have is that we got a lot of receivers, man, and there's probably 2 spots. If we going off of what they did last year, which was 6 receivers, we know 4 dudes. We already talked about that: Terry, Jahan, Diami, and Curtis. So knowing that those 4 guys are going to make the team, you're thinking there's 2 roster spots available at wide receiver. And so you start getting into, well, what are you guys looking for? Are you looking for some size? Because Cam Sims provided that size last year. He's no longer here. So are you looking for a guy with some size? You brought in plenty of guys that have that size, right? Marcus Kemp, Jalen Sample, Bryson Tremaine. I mean, it's a bunch of guys here with some size. Or are you looking for somebody with speed, or, are you using the tight ends as you guys with size? So you're not really too concerned with size. So Ron was like, look, we just looking for dudes that can do multiple things. Really is at the end of the day. Like, if you're going to be, a big physical possession receiver, that's fine. You better be able to come down and block, and you better be able to play some special teams. If you're not going to contribute on special teams, like every single special teams, for instance, Mitchell Tinsley, which he would still probably have to, but if you're not going to be like a core special teamer, then you better be able to play multiple wide receiver positions. The X, the Z, Ron talked about the zebra. You better be able to play all of that, right? And give me the best bang for my buck. If you're not going to be able to play multiple receiver positions, say you're Dax Milne and all you really do is work strictly in the slot. That's all Dax Milne works is in the slot. He don't play outside at all. If that's going to be your niche that you've carved out, then you better play some special teams. You better contribute in other ways. Well, Dax Milne doubles as your punt, kickoff, return, specialist / slot guy. So he can do a little bit of, everything that'll give you the comfort of knowing he's earning a roster spot. He serves multiple purposes. So Ron did talk about that. So I think it is interesting when I look at the receiver position and the tight end position. I look at Curtis Hodges, because I said when Amani Rodgers went down, this was Curtis Hodges' opportunity to make this team. I don't think he's making his team. I think Alex Armour's going to take his spot. But we'll see what happens. So with the receivers in particular, about the first 3 and 4 really with Diami. Dax and Byron Pringle. I think Byron Pringle's. I'm writing his name in pencil right now. He seems too good to be not on this roster because of all of the different boxes he checks off. Former EB player, knows the offense, already jumping in at multiple positions, can return punts and kickoffs, as we'll get to a little bit later on, and he's a core special teamer. Like, he just checks too many boxes off. I honestly think that he's the 5th receiver right now, and you got about 4 dudes fighting for 1 spot instead of 5 dudes fighting for 2. Because if you keep it at 2 and you don't want to give Byron Pringle anything right now, then I think you're looking at Milne, Pringle, Kemp, Allen, Tinsley, right? But I think you can go ahead and pencil in Pringle. So that's 5. So now you got Milne, McGowan, Kemp, Allen, and Tinsley. And I guess I'll throw Bryson Tremaine in since he's 3rd string on the other side. But I think that when you look at these receivers, if Milne isn't absolutely murdering it in the slot, like I think he has to have a big because we're going to get to the returns situation in a little bit. I just can't see him being the guy that they throw back there on punts this year. I feel like they've done too many things to try and make sure that he wasn't back there. Now, they didn't go out and get a specific punt returner. They didn't draft a guy. They didn't go out and sign somebody, but they did bring in Kashmir Allen. They did sign Byron Pringle. They still do have Jahan Dotson capable of doing that if feeling freaky and you want to throw him back there. I feel like they've tried to bake in enough situations where he wouldn't have to be back there. But it's always good to know that if they need him to be, he can be. So that's something to keep an eye on. The running back situation is also interesting. This caught me a little bit by surprise here because we knew the first 2. And I just assumed that Chris Rodriguez would be in this category by himself, 3rd, and Jonathan Williams would be 4th. But what this tells me, and it's not surprising as much as it's telling. And again, it's unofficial depth chart. So don't run away with it too much. But this is what this says to me. If they keep 4, these are your 4 right here, right? And we were having this conversation about Jared Patterson versus Jonathan Williams and who do they like more. They've always liked Jonathan Williams, always. And I remember after that Dallas game last year, Jared Patterson was another one of those dudes who I felt like showed a lot in that game. And I said, you know what? If that's the Jared Patterson I'm getting, I'd like to see more of that. And I thought that was going to carry over into, and then, also Jonathan Williams is an older running back. I think he's 29 years old or something like that. So I could see them saying, let's give Jared Patterson an opportunity. But I think if they go with 4 backs, and it's not out of the realm of possibility, they may just go with 3 and Alex Armour, they go with 4. We know Chris Rodriguez is going to be here. Jonathan Williams might be that other guy. So nothing else really sticks out to me Here's something I wanted to mention though. So I talked to somebody that had been at camp pretty much, who's been there every single day, that is in the building. And he told me that like Kaz Allen hasn't done anything in camp. OTAs, they were blown away by him. They were really excited about getting him. And they really felt like this kid could make team. And he's done absolutely nothing to separate himself in camp, which is why he's all the way in on the fourth line right now. Doesn't mean he's out of the discussion, but it just means he got a lot of ground to make up. But he could have a Steven Sims Jr. like ascension. Remember, Steven Sims Jr. was kind of this unknown anomaly, and then boom, you get into the preseason, couple of big returns, some nice catch and run situations, and then that final preseason game, if you remember, he had that big return, and that sealed it for him, and he made the team. And that was in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, 2019. So could Casimir Allen repeat that? I don't know. We'll see, but it's been a very quiet camp for him to this point. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the football. And again, not a lot here to chew on necessarily. I think there are maybe 2 or 3 things that I wanted to just mention. So I'll start with the starters. Nothing to see here. This is everything we knew it was. Similar to the offensive side, other than they had a fullback on the offense, which we're not sure if they're going to have a fullback or not. This is up and down, 1 through 11, exactly what we thought it was. So nothing to see here. All right, 3 corner look, 2 safeties, 2 backers, 4 defensive linemen. All right. So the second team, this is the first thing that jumped out of me on the second team. And again, keeping it in its proper perspective, it's unofficial. But the assumption has been all offseason that KJ Henry's making a team over Casey Toohill. Like, they're not keeping Casey Toohill over KJ Henry. Like, we just all assumed they traded up for KJ. And again, these games, but they like Casey Toohill a lot. He's been around for the last 2 years. This will be year 3 for him. So they like Casey Toohill a lot. And for KJ Henry to take his spot, and I got to stop disrespecting, Casey Toohill. Like he don't get pressure on the quarterback. He might not get a bunch of sacks, but he get pressure on the quarterback. And they like him a lot. So I can't sit here and act like KJ Henry just got an easy opportunity to make this team. He's 5th round pick. He's not a 4th round pick. He's not a 3rd round pick. KJ Henry does not have to make this team. They can cut him, and if he doesn't do much in preseason, they get him onto the practice squad. So I got to stop disrespecting Casey Toohill like he don't have a shot. Because I just been flat out dismissing him like, okay, if they keep 5, here are the 5, edge rushers, and his name never comes up. If they keep 6, then Casey can come and play, But I got to stop acting like if they keep 5, hell, if they keep 4, which we know they're keeping more than 4. They're going to keep 5 at a bare minimum. But I got to stop acting like he not one of them, or he can't be. Because if you look, you got Sweat, first guy backing him up is Casey Toohill. You got Chase Young, first guy backing him up is James Smith-Williams. We know that to be a fact. Like, this first web of 8 players right here, that first little web of 8 players, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, that's the same look we had from last year. So it only makes sense that they just kept that kind of status quo. And they got FA. Remember we talked about this last year? They had FA as a defensive tackle. FA is an edge rusher. He's not a defensive tackle. We had that whole conversation last year. So I truly believe that, and I'm not moving off the spot, but what this does is it forces me to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is Casey Toohill, because I've been dismissing him, that he's got a shot. Like, I can't keep dismissing Casey like he don't be out here, doing his job. And he's just a guy that was holding a roster spot. And now that we drafted, 2 defensive ends, not 1, 2 defensive ends, somebody going to take his spot. And that's not necessarily the truth. So you got Sweat, you got Young, you got Hill, you got JS Dub, you got Andre Jones, F.A. Obata, and KJ Henry. For me, if you're looking at the edge rushers, you got 5 spots, maybe 6, depending on how they go with other positions. But you got 5 spots, and you got 7 dudes vying for 5 spots. Now, we know 3 of them. I can't even say we know 4 of them because I'm not sure what the hell is going to happen between F.A., KJ, and Casey, right? We know Montez Sweat, Chase Young, and James Smith-Williams are on this team for sure. No doubt about it. I can't guarantee you that Casey Hill or F.A. Obata are on this team, even though I feel confident that F.A. is going to be here. Can't assure you of that, but I feel confident in saying that F.A. is going to be here. I think the real debate is KJ Henry versus Casey Hill if you're going 5. And with KJ being on that 3rd line right now, you're looking and you're saying, hey, because F.A. going to be here. F.A. going to be here. I feel confident in that. But I'm looking at KJ and Casey, and I'm like, are y'all battling for 1 spot, or are we keeping 6 and both of y'all going to be here? We'll see. Again, they didn't have this issue last year because there was no Chase Young, so you didn't have to have this conversation. You could keep as many of these dudes as you wanted to. There was no issues. Now that Chase is back, somebody's got to go. And last year, your boy ended up making the team. Shaka Tony ended up making the team because Chase wasn't here. Now, it's not the case now. So, anyway, I digress. Defensive tackle, Ron keeps telling us, hey, don't sleep on Adula Anderson. Okay, wake me up then. Because I think it's just going to be Deron, Jonathan, Fedarian, and John Ridgeway. I think that's that. But, we'll see what happens there. Linebacker, really not much to see here. The big question has always been, are they keeping 5 or are they keeping 4 or are they keeping 5? Jamie Davis, Cody Barton, Khaleke Hudson are locks as the first 3. I probably put David Mayo in as another lock. And you got your 4 linebackers. The question is, are you keeping 5 with Milo Eifler? That to me is the real question. If you're keeping 5, Eifler is probably your 5th. DeJohn Harris made the team last year as the 5th. I think we kept 5 linebackers last year, and DeJohn Harris was the 5th linebacker. So don't count out anybody other than Farrod Gardner. But I think it's going to be 4 dudes at linebacker. If they keep a 5th, it'll be Milo. Excuse me. Somebody already corrected me on that. It'll be Milo Eifler. So don't count out Milo Eifler. I'll just say that. But I think it's Jamin Davis, Cody Barton, David Mayo, Khaleke Hudson at linebacker. So nothing there looks out of place. And just so you know what kind of defense we run, we've talked about this, but we are a 4-2-5 defensive look. That's our base coverage. Okay? 4 D linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. So just in case you guys were wondering out there, you could take off one of the corners and add in another safety when they decide to go with the 3 safety look. You can take off a linebacker, add in another safety, go with 6 defensive backs, but you're using that other safety as more of a backer. That's that Buffalo nickel that they talk about. So there's so many different things they can do schematically with this defense. You can go to the Cinco package, which takes off one of the offensive or linebackers and adds in another defensive lineman. So there's so many things they can do, right? But this is the base. Anyway, so one of the most interesting positions on the team currently is the cornerback position. So again, take this with a grain of salt. We don't know how many they're going to keep. The number is anywhere from 5 to 7. I think 7 is a bit ambitious. I think 6 is a little aggressive, but it's very doable. I think the number is 5. They only kept 4 corners last year. Now, some of that was out of the fact that we just didn't have a lot of stuff that you wanted to keep last year. We didn't have a lot of talent, right? I mean, we had to put Rashad Wildgoose out on the field last year. We knew we went into the season last year saying, hey, they got to do something about corner, and they didn't. And it kicked our ass. It came back to bite us by the time we got to the end of the season. When William Jackson III turned out to be a bust and, Juice got injured, it came back to bite us in the ass eventually. But this year, we got plenty of options. Now, one of the things that jumped out at me here, and this is a real conversation that we have not had yet. When you look at this cornerback situation, look who's backing up Kendall Fuller. Now, again, unofficial depth chart. I told you this already on the team website. They have Quan Martin listed as a defensive back. He's the only player that is listed as a DB. Everybody else has a specific designation, whether it be corner or safety. He's the only one that says DB. And Ron was non-committal when asked specifically what Quan was. He would not answer. He said he's a defensive back. We can play him anywhere. He is a Swiss Army knife. So it's interesting that this particular graphic has him listed as a corner. Now, why this is important? Here's why this is important. If they truly view him, because in the grand scheme of things, you look at the defensive backfield and you just say, how many DBs did you keep? Normally, you can say we kept 11. Now we're gonna dig in and we're gonna say how many of them are safeties, how many are corners. We're gonna dig in and separate them, but they're a group. So you might just say we're dedicating 11 roster spots to the defensive back room. You pick the 11 you want. It doesn't really matter because they feel like their safeties are so interchangeable. Just you pick 11 DBs. We're keeping 11 DBs. All right. Now, if we dig into this and we say that Quan Martin is a corner, that changes everything, right? That changes everything. The whole way that we shape this roster changes from a defensive backfield perspective. If you say he's a corner, why? Let's get into why, right? So the assumption was he's a safety. So if he's a safety, right? Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, Danny Johnson, to me, all are locks on this roster, okay? So that's 4. The assumption is you're keeping 5 corners and 5 safeties, okay? So then we started talking about, okay, who's going to be that 5th guy? Rashad Wildgoose, Tariq Castro-Fields were both brought on last year as rookies, and Wildgoose played a lot of snaps from about a good 4-week stretch there. Wildgoose was in there. The goose was on the loose. They like Tariq Castro-Fields, which is why they're still working with him. And then you got all these other guys and then you got Christian Holmes. Don't want to leave him out. So you got Danny Johnson or Wildgoose, Tariq Castro-Fields, and Christian Holmes, probably all battling for one spot if we think they're keeping 5, right? 5 corners. The 5 safeties were this was easy money, right? Curl, Forrest, Butler, Reeves, and Martin, right? So we already knew the 5. But what if they look at Quan Martin as a corner, right? So now it's Fuller, Juice, Forbes, Johnson, and Martin if you got 5, right? And then you could go down to this safety spot and you could say, well, now we only got 4 safeties. We can keep another safety. But what if they really like Terrell Burgess? Brought him over from the Rams. What if they really like him? All right. They keep him. Right? So that changes everything because we already canceled out all the other safeties. Like, ain't no other safety making the roster. We already got 5. Well, if you view Quan Martin as a corner, you could leave another safety on the roster. But then you could also say, to hell with that. We'll keep those 4 safeties and we'll keep 6 corners at that point. That's why I say it really don't matter if you don't keep another safety. It only matters if you're saying we want 5 and 5. And Quan Martin is one of your corners. Now you got a chance to keep another safety that wasn't even in the discussion. But if you just say, look, I want 10 defensive backs, you could go 6 corners and 4 safeties. We know who the 4 safeties are. And you would just add in another corner, right? So I just found that interesting that he's listed as a corner. But in the grand scheme of things, if you're not keeping a fifth safety outside of Martin, if he's listed as a corner, then it doesn't matter. Because you can just keep 6 corners, he being one of the 6 corners, and keep 4 safeties and keep it pushing. Same effect if you're going to call Martin a DB. He's a safety and a corner, so it really don't matter. So just something to chew on. Just a little food for thought. You do the dishes. All right. So I think this looks pretty much spot on the back end. Like DeMarcus Fields, Jace Whitaker, DJ Sturgis, Nick Whiteside. Those guys don't stand a chance of making this team. And that's what I said. You know, fast guys run fast, slow guys run slow. That's what this is. It's going to tell you Curtis Brooks and Josh Pryor. And like if they had to trim the roster down, which they don't have to anymore, if they did, these are the guys that would have been getting cut first. That's all that says. Then you get to special teams. And I think this is probably more juicy for a lot of you than any of the other shit we've been talking about. And so, obviously, Tressway has no competition. He'll be your starting punter. Joey Sly, I think, is going to win that competition. He'll be your starting place kicker. Tressway is your holder. Cam Cheeseman has no competition. He'll be your long snapper. Here's where shit gets interesting. And honestly, I felt like this was somewhat lazy because I feel like they just took what was there at the end of last year and just left it there. Kind of like, I feel like they did a lot of that. That's why I said some of this stuff, you could easily just say, yeah, they really didn't put too much thought into it, which is why you say the coaches really ain't have their hand in this, because they just took what was there last year and just left it and then added in the new players. You know, this kind of feels like that. Like Antonio Gibson, it might still be your primary kick returner. Like that's real. I find it hard to believe that Dax Milne is still your primary punt returner. And I'll take it a step further. I find it hard to believe that Jahan Dotson is his primary backup, right? And again, you know how earlier I said it's not linear? There are, like, this isn't receiver or offensive line where there's multiple of those where you can say, hey, if this guy isn't in, then you could just go up here and pull a guy and you know, flip-flop it. Like, these are all your punt returners right here. Like, you're staring at them. These are it. Now, you know, Byron Pringle could be in this mix, but I told you, I don't have any proof of him returning kicks. I went back and looked at his college log. I don't have any proof of him being a punt returner ever. Kick returner, yes, dynamic. In college, and he ran one back in the NFL for a touchdown. So I know he can do kickoff. I told you, everybody can't return punts. That's not a job that everybody, just because you fielded kickoffs, it takes a different animal to return punts. So Jahan, they're scared. If they were going to put Jahan back there, they would have did it at some point last year. They never did. And maybe they got a different outlook on things and they feel more comfortable and they might try him back there this year. I don't think they put him back there. So you're looking at Kierick McGowan. That man ain't making the roster. Now, he was here for special teams purposes last year. I can't imagine him making the football team this year. So then there's Kaz Allen, and he's all the way in 4th right now. So again, I mean, which aligns with what I've been told, which is he hasn't done anything in camp. But a lot of you don't want to see Dax, back on punts. He may be. I mean, keep it a buck with y'all. Like, if Byron Pringle can't return punts, which I'm not saying this list, because I've seen him fielding punts in practice, and I've heard from others that have been there that he's been back there fielding punts as well. So I'm not saying that he can't do it. But Jahan fielded punts last year, and he's fielding punts right now. He didn't touch a single one last year. So that don't mean shit. At the end of the day, I said all of that to say this. Dax Milne might still be here as our primary punt returner. As much as we've been fighting that shit, I still think they've done too much this offseason to ensure that he doesn't have to be back there. Like, worst case scenario, he's back there. But they've put themselves in a position where they feel like he shouldn't have to be. I think Gibson is going to be our primary kick returner, though. You know, if it's not Pringle, I think they want Pringle to go out and break off a big one in camp to kind of solidify his roster spot. I think that's what they really want. But I wouldn't be shocked if they got Antonio Gibson back there. Like AG back there makes a ton of sense because they want him to touch it as much as possible. That's just another way to get the ball in his hands and something that he did in college and was damn good at it. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him back there, but I think they would prefer to put a guy like Byron Pringle back there. If you're going to have him on the roster and he's going to be active on game day, might as well have him returning kickoffs. Why the hell not? So all of this will be fun and fascinating. Of all the things that we'll watch play out in the preseason, this right here is, for me, for my money, the most entertaining. What they're going to do on punts and kickoffs, you know, and how they're going to kind of divvy up the reps in the preseason. And like 2 years ago, when we didn't know, remember they kept 7 receivers, and we didn't know how many we were going to keep at that time. We were saying 5, no more than 6. They kept 7. And the reason they kept 7 is because DeAndre Carter was the primary return man. And they didn't want to cut. They weren't going to cut Dax Milne. He was a rookie. They liked him. They drafted him. They weren't going to cut him. And we just thought, well, DeAndre Carter's out. And they kept him too. And he was the one getting all of the reps. If you remember that year in the preseason, he was the one getting most of the reps for punts and kickoffs, you know, during the preseason. So last year, Dax got a number of reps, but they also gave a lot of reps to Alex Erickson last year. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. I think Byron Pringle ends up being your kick returner when it's all said and done. And I know you don't want to hear this, but I think Dax Milne might be our punt returner again next year, unless Byron Pringle, or this year rather, unless Byron Pringle can get in there and show them that he has, because 2/3 of the battle on punts, because you don't get to return a lot of these. You fair catch a lot of these. You got to make split decisions. Should I catch it? Should I not catch it? Should I fair catch it? You know, do I have enough space? Like you have to do all of this in a matter of, you know, seconds. Hang time on most punts about 4.5 seconds. You know, maybe 4 to 4.5 seconds is the hang time. So you got to judge the ball. You got to see where you at. You got to see where the closest defender is. And then you got to make a decision. What do I do? I'm standing at the 8-yard line. I got 12 yards of space in between me and the nearest defender. But he's running at like 19 miles per hour. The ball's about to land. He'll probably be 5 yards closer by the time I catch it. Do I have enough space to make him miss? Should I catch it at the 8-yard line? This is pretty dicey. I could let this thing hit, but if it hit and it don't go straight in the end zone, that guy running full speed at me could get down here and down it. Like, this is all the shit that you're going through in your head. And it's a little windy, so the ball kind of playing a little bit of a trick on you. Do I catch it? Do I run? Do I act like I'm going to catch it and run forward? Go block the guy so he can't stop it at the 2-yard line? Do I fair catch this bad boy and we start at the 8? Like, what do I do? You can't just put anybody. Y'all can talk all the shit you want about Dax. He ain't fumbled a single damn punt last year. That in itself is worth a damn standing ovie, because the shit we've dealt with in previous years, that Jamison Crowder year where he single-handedly handed over a game or two because he couldn't hold on to the ball. Steven Sims Jr. in 2020, where he was fumbling the shit left and right, huge contributor to the loss against Carolina, literally gave them 6 points on a fumble punt. They got kicked into the end zone and they recovered it in the end zone. Like, that Arizona game, he had a big fumble early in that game too. Like, Steven Sims Jr. was terrible in 2020. So I know a lot of y'all don't like Dax Milne, don't want him back there. All this shit. He catches the damn ball. And I know y'all saying, oh, anybody. No, not anybody can do that. Not anybody can do that. Anyway, I digress. I think that this is an interesting roster this year. For the first time, we got talent. You got this overflow. You're going to have some tough decisions. You want to be in this position. You want to be in a position where you're going to have some tough decisions. And some of these guys can make it even tougher if they go out and play well in the preseason. They'll make it easy on Ron and company if the lights are too bright and the stage is too big. and these guys don't show up and play well in the preseason, they'll make it easy on them who gets cut and who's here. If these guys go out and play well, there'll be some tough decisions to make. Because again, I'm looking at a guy, that you took in the 4th round, and I'm saying, look, he's not playing. He's not ready. You sure you want to keep him on your 53-man roster? Because there's a guy that you're about to cut right now that could help you this year. And if you cut him, you might not get him back. And they're going to be thinking the same way about their 4th round pick and saying, look, he's got much more of an upside than this guy that you want to keep here. But I'm like, Ron, bro, you got to stop thinking about 2-3 years down the road. You don't get it done this year, your ass gone. Who gives a shit about the 4th round pick and what he could be 2 years from now? You need to win now. These are all things you got to think about. I think this shit's going to be fascinating when it's all said and done. Anyway, I digress. So, let's see what you guys have to say. Landry Baldwin, stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB. Glad to have you in the building. Always good to chop it up with you, Landry. Y'all know what to do, Mob. Show Landry some love. He's been here before, man. Always good to have you back where you belong. Landry Baldwin, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, Chris. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, hey, Lou, hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, Chris. Likewise, as always. Hope this, first of all y'all in the DMV that's further up north, hope that storm isn't as bad as everybody thought it was going to be. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I went and got, the kids some groceries, all that stuff early because they were making the government was shutting shit down. I was like, whoa, this must be serious if they shut down, DC. So I hope that storm, didn't hit as hard as they thought, and that everybody is fine and everything is well up that way. Says, who do you think will be the last 2 receivers to make the squad, and how does this impact punt return? Also, name one non-starter on offense and defense that needs to step up, and why. All right. So the 2 receivers, the last 2, I think are going to be Dax Milne and Byron Pringle. So I've already told you, I think Pringle just brings too much to the table. There's too many boxes that he checks off. Core special teamer, knows the offense, been with EB before, can return kickoffs, can play receiver. And Ron talked about, guys with speed that can take the top off the defense. Well, Byron Pringle can do that. He's a legit, 4-4 dude. So it's just too many boxes that he checks to not be here. I think he's going to be here. Dax Milne, as I mentioned, is a slot receiver by trade. So I don't think he checks off that box Ron talked about, being able to play the X, the Z, the zebra. I think he can only play the zebra, which is the slot, right? I don't think he can do everything, but I think that ability to double as a punt returner and an emergency kickoff returner is what's ultimately, and I've already said this, as a standalone wide receiver, as a he can get open. He's a good receiver. And I think the added benefit of him being, if nothing else, reliable option as a return man is what's ultimately going to keep him here. So those are the 2 receivers I think will be on the roster. But you asked me one non-starter on both offense and defense that needs to step up and why. Non-starter on offense and defense. So let's start on offense. For me, the guy that needs to step up, that's a non-starter. I mean, the low-hanging fruit probably is Antonio Gibson. Contract year, really trying to figure out what his niche is in the league. I know y'all saw that interview he did with Kay Adams, and she asked him, if he could do it all over again, would he have made the switch to running back? And he was like, nah, I would just stay at receiver. Like, I mean, what's done is done now. He can't go back and change that. And he's like, I've already acclimated to the running back position, but yeah, I prefer to be a receiver. So he's got to carve out a niche for himself in this league. So I think that's low-hanging fruit. I'll leave that for someone else. I'm going to say De'Ami Brown. You know, this offseason, he's, started a YouTube channel. He's talked about, taking that jump. If Ron tells me one more time that he led the NCAA or was one of the leaders in the NCAA in contested catches when he came out of UNC one more damn time, I'm going to punch somebody in the face. So we keep hearing that shit. Like, he brought it up again today when they were talking about big receivers, and he's like, yeah, well, De'Ami can go and win to contested. I'm like, and I sat there, and as he was saying, I said, all right, Ron, I know what you about. Go, just say the shit. God damn. Stop bringing this shit up. So, y'all probably be saying the same thing about me sometimes. So, anyway, now I know how it feels, if that's how y'all feel about me sometimes. Because I was like, damn, Ron, how many times you going to say this shit? Okay, we got it. The first 15 times you done said the shit. So, I think De'Ami is in one of those situations. I've already talked about it. This regime believes in him because they spent the 3rd round pick on him. He's with his best friend and the best quarterback he's ever played with. And if he can't get it done with him this year, there's no way people are going to believe in him. Understand that if Ron and company aren't here, you're gone next year because the new regime's coming in. And guys like you, those fringe guys that don't have to be here, are the first ones to go. You're on the last year of your rookie deal. When that next group comes in here, you're going to be the first one to go. All right. And so for me, De'Ami has to step up, prove his worth, so that no matter what happens, because even if Antonio Gibson has a subpar year, somebody else will give him an opportunity around the league. Somebody may even give him a chance to go back to receiver strictly. You know what I'm saying? He'll remain in the league even if it's not in a Commander's uniform. De'Ami Brown, on the other hand, though, if he doesn't make it here in Washington, there's no guarantees that he's going to get another opportunity somewhere else. He probably will be in somebody's camp, but there's no guarantee he's going to make somebody's roster. Like, this is his chance to prove to whomever's here, hey, you want me around. You want me around. So I'd say De'Ami Brown on offense. There's a number of, guys you could probably pick for that. Offensive line-wise, you could probably say Sadiq Charles, if he's not starting, he'd probably be the one that you'd say, that needs to step up. Defensively, that is a tough one because, honestly speaking, everybody plays. And I don't know if there's one guy in particular that I look at and say he's got to step up, because that's on the defensive side. Because, the defensive ends, you don't feel that way about any of them. The backup defensive tackles, you don't feel that way about any of them. The linebackers, I guess Khalil Hudson, but I mean, he's definitely a candidate. I mean, when you look at the corners, there's not one that just sticks out like a sore thumb. The safety's not necessarily. Percy's only in year 2, right? Like, I don't know if there's a guy defensively. I guess I'd go with Khalil Hudson because he got cut last year. He wasn't on this roster last year, right? He was on the practice squad, but he wasn't physically on the 53-man roster when camp ended. And so he got a taste of what it's like to not be on the football team. And once you're not on the football team after the 53 is set, you're one step closer to being out of the league. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no guarantees to the practice squad guys. So I think he got a taste of that, and he's like, bro, I can't go back. Well, if you don't want to go back, you got to be ready to take somebody's spot. If they bullshitting around, if Jamin Davis is bullshitting around, if Cody Barton is bullshitting around, you got to be prepared to take somebody's spot and not give it back and prove you belong in this league. Because again, much like Diami, if the next group comes in here and that next coaching staff doesn't see what I see in you, just like Diami, you're probably going to be one of the first cast aside. Unlike Diami, I think you signed a 1-year deal to come back here. Diami is under contract for next year. You're not. So I think Khalik is the guy that I'm going to go with on defense. That was a good question. Landry Baldwin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, the newest member of the MOBB, who writes, I don't get why JP isn't talked about. C-Rod is the backup for B-Rob. They are power backs. The perfect backup for 24 is JP. He's good at pass catching and can return kicks like 24. J. Will is another C-Rod. I don't think they see him like that, though. They don't see him like another C-Rod. I think they feel like J. Will is... I think he would be more of a backup to Brian Robinson as well. But I think they feel like he can catch the ball out of the backfield. J. Will can. And so he can do multiple things. And when he got, and look, I can say this, and I think most fans will back me up on this. When we've seen Jonathan Williams get opportunities in these games, he's played well. The Dallas game, he was extraordinary in that Dallas game last year. Not the season finale, but the first game in Dallas when Dak was out and they had Cooper Rush in. Every one of the backs that touched it that day was averaging over 5 yards a pop. I think Gibson was at 5 and some change. I think J.D. McKissick was averaging 7. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jonathan Williams averaging over 9 yards a pop in that game. You could fact check me on that. But I know they was all killing it. Dallas couldn't stop us from running. Our problem was we just couldn't throw the ball worth a damn. But we was running that shit down their throat in that first game. So I think they like Jonathan Williams a lot. And, you know, what was always going to get Jared Patterson is his size. People just have a hard time overlooking that. And the problem with Patterson is if you're going to be that small, you better be fast as shit. Like, you're going to be that small, you got to be Danny Woodhead where you super shifty. Like, you got to have an elite trait. Austin Eckler is like a pass-catching dynamo, and his body, like you've seen some of his workouts, like dude is like a walking muscle. So he's hard to get down on the ground. You're going to be short, you better have one extremely redeeming quality, something that is so far away from the norm, it makes you stand out in a crowd, right? Darren Sproles was fast as shit, shifty and fast as shit, which allowed him to stick around for 15, 16 NFL seasons or whatever it was. Danny Woodhead, extremely shifty, had some speed, but not the fastest guy in the world, but super. Like Jared Patterson ain't super fast. He ain't super shifty. He's strong, but he ain't Austin Eckler strong. Like he don't have any one thing that stands out about him, and that's why he didn't get drafted. And that's, I think, why he continues to get passed over, even though I liked him in that final game against Dallas, that season finale against Dallas. But, yeah, I don't think worst case scenario, well, push come to shove, if they're keeping 4, I don't think Jared Patterson's the 4th guy. I'll just say that. But that's why you got preseason. That's why we got some more camp left. There's plenty of time for that to change. If they decide to keep 4 backs, we'll see what happens. Frankie, yo, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Frankie, yo, writes, good evening, Lou. Evening, Frankie, yo. Says, how much work would you like to see Hal get this preseason? So I've already told you, it's not about the amount of work. It's the quality of work that he gets. And that's all they care about. It's not about Ron, people get on my nerves when they say he's going to play about 20 snaps. That's dumb, because what happens if you go 3 and out, that's 6 snaps. And let's say you go 3 and out 3 times. And I mean, 20 snaps is a lot when you think about it like that, because Now that you're going into your fourth possession and you get to play 11 of what ultimately ends up being a 15-play drive. Are you going to pull him out at play 11 because he hit 20 snaps? Or are you going to let him finish the drive? That's why when somebody's like, yeah, they're going to play about 15 to 20 snaps. Okay, all right, that's cool. But again, same scenario. First two possessions, 3 and out, you don't look good. You're not happy. You put them in there for the third possession. And then let's say it's, again, a 15 drive, 15 play drive, right? Possession. That's over 20 snaps. It's 21 to be exact. Are you going to take them out before that last snap? No. But I don't like to play with the numbers game. They'll be in that vicinity somewhere. My thing is, how did they look? That first possession might be 2 first downs, and then you ultimately punt. You stall out around midfield. Okay, that was a solid possession. I'll give you one more possession to see if you can do something. It might be a 3 and out. Okay, you're done. I've seen enough. And the 3 and out might have been you had an open receiver and the DB just made a great play. Like it was a good ball and the DB just made a great play. Or, the defense, they just guessed right. It's vanilla. You're not really game planning. You ran a basic concept. They played the perfect coverage to take it away. Sam gets pressured and has to throw it away, and you got to punt. Okay. He played a total of 14 plays. The first two possessions, I said the first possession, you got a couple first downs, right? So let's say you went to third down twice and you converted both of those, and then the last one stalled out and you had to settle for a field goal, or you had to punt rather. Then the next possession, you just came out, you went 3 and out, and it was a grand total of 12 plays. That's fine. That's right around what Ryan Fitzpatrick did in 2021. He had that one completion to Logan Thomas. We was like, oh, we was going crazy. Oh, that was a crazy. You see that throw to Logan? Yo, that shit was beautiful. I think he ended up being like 6 of 9 for 27 yards against the Patriots, in that game. And we were like, oh, okay, that's cool. They took him out. I can see that happening with Sam. What I want productivity. I want drives that actually push the offensive line, push the offense, get him some reps. I think 2 possessions in this first game is enough. If they're not both 3 and outs. If either one of them is 1 or 2 first downs, 2 possessions is enough, right? You just want one of them to have some sustainability so they get lathered up a little bit and see how Sam handles multiple situations. They might blitz him once. You want to see how he handles that. He might have a situation where they take away his second option. Does he go through his progressions quickly? Like, these are the things you're looking for. And once you get to check off a number of those boxes, you don't need to see any more, right? As far as the second preseason out, so I told you guys to put a pin in this. We could take it out right now. Ron talked about preseason work for the offense because I told y'all my assumption was the offense is going to get plenty of work this preseason because they just need it, But Ron talked about the emphasis of those joint practices with the Ravens, and he could easily be swayed into believing, hey, we got all the work we needed to get during the week. Remember, that's a Monday night game. We practicing with the Ravens, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday or Wednesday and Thursday. What's the 15th? I think it's the 15th and the 16th. The 15th is a Tuesday. So I think it's the 15th and the 16th are the 2 joint practice days. If that is in fact the case, you still don't play that game against the Ravens until Monday. I think it's a Monday night game, as a matter of fact. It's a Monday night telecast that we're on against the Ravens. So if that is in fact the case, which it'd be pretty cool because if it is a Monday night game, it would force them to talk about Sam Howell. It will force them to do a deep dive and not just do the simple gloss over, that everybody's done. Oh, it's Sam Howell, 5th round pick. He sucks. That's why they're not going to be any good. It forces Joe Buck and Troy Aikman to talk about him, and we'll kind of get a little sense of how they feel, and what Troy feels about him. yeah, because at the end of the season when he played, it was on Fox, so it was Greg Olson and that group. But anyway, I digress. He made it seem like, hey, if we get all the work we need in that joint practice with those 2 days, we might not play the starters as much in the second preseason game. I can give Ron credit for this. He is very ambiguous when it comes to preseason conversations. He don't really give you shit. Like normally I can decipher and read through, Ron's bullshit. Preseason, he's been really good, at not disguising what it is he's going to do. We've been able to kind of figure out that last preseason game don't mean shit to Ron. So we can pretty much say that he won't be playing the starters in that game, no matter what he says, because he's lied to us before and made it seem like, hey, they might get some work, and they didn't play. He did that shit last year. He's not playing the starters in the third preseason game. But my assumption, and I'm sticking with this until he proves me wrong and goes in a different direction, till otherwise notified, we playing our starters in the second preseason game. The offensive starters, at least. Now, how much? Because my assumption was it'd be more than the first preseason game. And it'd be more than the first preseason game by a wide margin. I said 2 possessions in the first preseason game for the starting offense. My feeling was like, and 2 possessions could mean 2 totally different things in 2 different games, right? 2 possessions could be 2 3-and-outs in one game, and that you didn't even last half of the first quarter. 2 possessions could be halfway through the second quarter in another game. You know what I'm saying? Because the Ravens get it, and they go on a marathon drive that eats up, 11 minutes of the clock, spanning from the 8-minute mark of the first quarter into the, 11-minute mark of the second quarter, and then your offense, who's only touched it once, is back on the field midway through the second quarter. You know what I'm saying? So you don't know what it's going to look like, but it could be 2 drives in both games. Whereas I was thinking it'd probably be like 4 or 5 drives against the Ravens. Might just be 2, because he might be like, yeah, we got enough work in. I think it's a dangerous game you play if you don't play them significant snaps in the second one, because there is no third. You're not playing them in the third preseason game. And remember, there's no fourth preseason game. And how far away you like, literally, if they don't play again, if you don't play them in the second preseason game, you're not playing them in the third preseason game. There's a week between the start of the season and the end of the preseason, and then you play them. They would have not played football essentially for a month, like a real game in a month. And you're going to try them out there week 1? I think that's dangerous, personally. Because what I'm seeing right now around the league is I'm seeing a shift again. Because the last 2 years in particular, we saw this seismic shift in mentality and philosophy from playing your guys and making sure that they were ready to, I don't want them to get hurt. We're going to get these joint practices in. I'm not putting my starters on the field at all, for real. A lot of teams, the Rams swear by that. The Chargers swear by that. The Seahawks did that. The Broncos did that with Russell Wilson last year. There were other teams who did the exact same thing. Like a lot of them didn't really play their starters at all in the preseason. A lot of teams have already, CJ, I remember last year saying, how is it that the Texans feel comfortable enough with Davis Mills that he only played, Davis Mills, I think, played a total of 2 possessions in the preseason last year. It's Davis Mills. Are you effing kidding me? You think he's that good he doesn't need preseason work? Is this a Twilight Zone? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Sean Payton's already come out and said, Russell Wilson's playing in the first preseason game. The Panthers have already said, Bryce Young's playing in the first preseason game. The Texans have already said, C.J. Stroud in the first team offense, they playing. Like, a lot of teams have already come out and said, hey, we playing our starters in this first preseason game. The hell with what y'all talking about. So I think it's going to be a little bit different this year. I said all of that to say this. I think you're going to get 2 possessions out of them in the first preseason game, and then I don't really know what the hell to expect in the second one. What would be enough for me is you just have to play them in the second preseason game. I don't know if there's an amount that satisfies me. You just need to play them. I don't think you can afford to not play your starters. I don't give a damn how good those 2 practice days are with the Ravens. I don't think you can afford to not play your starters somewhat in that second preseason game, because you're not going to play them in the third preseason game. I'll tell you this. Let me say this. Kevin Sheehan used to say that the best thing you could do for your quarterback in the preseason is just like, you don't need to run the football. Just throw it. I don't believe in that. That's what the Patriots used to do with Brady, is they would come out and Brady would throw that bitch 24 times in the first half. And they would hardly run the ball. Just work on pass offense. Our offensive line needs all the work. Run game, pass game. But I think there is a bit of like wanting Sam to get into a rhythm, wanting to just get some shit on film for him and give him some things to work on as you approach the season. It could be dangerous because you're giving the opposition more tape for them to study on him as well. But I always say, I don't worry about what everybody else is doing. I worry about what I can control, what we're doing. So I always would tell you guys, if we take care of what we got to take care of, we should be fine. Like, I'm not worried about nobody else in the division. If we do what we can do, what we're capable of doing, when it's all said and done and the season's over, regular season, we should have enough to be in the playoffs. That's how I felt last year. Like, don't worry about what the Giants or the Cowboys or the Eagles do. We take care of our business and we'll be there at the end. And if we would have done that, we would have been there in the end. And so I kind of feel that way with Sam. Like, don't worry about other teams having more film on him, because they're going to have it eventually anyway. After he plays the first 2-3 games of the season, it'll be enough out there for them to dissect and figure out, oh, he struggles with this, and let's try to force him to do that. So we'll have to make adjustments to the adjustment at some point, but just worry about him getting better, him being ready for week 1 against Arizona, him being ready for week 2 against Denver and that defense. Just worry about that. J Mart, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, J Mart, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, what's up, LT? How is Martin doing? What should we expect? They've been really excited about what they've gotten out of Quan Martin to this point. They love his versatility. All of the secondary members have been ranting and raving about how smart this dude is. He jumped in really from day one. You know, the rookies came in, had their own mini camp, got the playbook, all that stuff. And they said by the time the vet showed up, he was ready. He jumped in there, and it was like he had already been in the system 2-3 years already. So I've heard nothing but good things about Quan Martin to this point. And the veterans, Kendall Fuller, all those guys have been saying, like, this dude is super smart, you know. So what should we expect? Another guy that they can throw in the mix. Honestly, a lot of people were trying to connect dots to the whole situation with Cam Curl. They drafted Quan Martin to take his place so they don't have to pay him. I don't necessarily buy that. What I do feel like is they were in such a bad spot last year when Cam Curl wasn't on the field in any capacity. They want to eliminate that. They want another smart football player that is multifaceted, that they can move around like a chess piece, so that if Cam Curl isn't in there, they don't have the defense literally fall off of a cliff. And I think that's what Quan Martin provides them with. And a guy that can take it away, something that we have lacked since Jack's taken over, essentially, as the defensive coordinator. Frankie, yo, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, yo, Lou, Ronald wanted me to let you know that back at UNC, De'Ami Brown was one of the leaders in the NCAA with contested catches. You gonna make me punch somebody in the face around here, man. I'm trying to keep the peace in my household, man. I ain't trying to have to light nobody up. I hope Ron understands that we get it, Ron. We get it. Seriously. We get it. Jay Black, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Jay writes, I'm probably overthinking it, but nobody's talking about how Mathis is getting worked by linemen that might not make the roster. It's not a big deal because Mathis is a run defender. He's a run stopper. He's a physical force inside. He's not a pass rusher. And in those one-on-one drills, that's what it's really about. Like, now, if Fedarian's trying to get, I don't know exactly what these reps look like in terms of what moves he's using, but if, you're Fedarian Mathis, you're trying stuff. That's what you do at practice. You try stuff. I want to see if this will work. But his thing is brute force, physicality, and strength. And every now and again, I'll beat you to the spot, knife into the backfield, and make a play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. But his thing is physicality, overpowering someone and using that to his advantage. And in those one-on-one reps, that doesn't always work. Now, if you get a guy looking for something else and then you come with straight power, you can, like, that's what Jonathan Allen did. To who was it? Oh man, I can't think of. I want to say it was Montero. Got his ass whooped where he steamrolled him. Like Jonathan Allen, they know him for his quickness and all, and he just got up under his pads and just dump trucked him. Right? You would expect Fedarian Mathis to be doing something like that, but he's a big dude. Fedarian Mathis is like 6'4", right? He's a big guy. So it's a little different when you got a little bit of size on you. You don't always win that leverage battle, but Fedarian's gonna be fine. I'm not worried about him. He'll be exactly what we thought he was gonna be for us last year before he got hurt, which is a quality interior backup defensive lineman. So I'm not tripping. He'll be all right. Anyway, I digress. That is the final comment, and so thus we can get out of here. I thank y'all for joining me. We will be back tomorrow with a breakdown for practice. I will have a LouieTeeNetwork podcast episode for you. I think I'm not sure, but I think Hard Knocks starts tomorrow. So with that in mind, I may do something right after that episode. If I watch it live, I may come back with a recap. I may wait till the next day and just react to it on the podcast, but we'll see. I think me and my wife are going to sit down and watch it live because we're going to enjoy this final week. This is our last week of her not having work. And my son starts kindergarten tomorrow. It's still 8 minutes before the 8th. He starts kindergarten tomorrow, so it's a milestone for us over here. Excited about that. And then she goes back to work next week. So we're going to enjoy this last week because her going back to work is like a sign. It's like the signal that, all right, shit's about to get real. And during the course of the NFL season, we could be like two ships passing in the night. We'll be in the house all week, but it's so busy, we really won't even see each other, spend any time until the weekend. So we're going to enjoy this week. Anyway, I digress. Jay Black, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, how are you doing, Lou? Hope all is well. Likewise. He says, your last live, you was done. I thought you was going to wake up in Debo pigeon coop. LOL. First of all, that was not my last live. That was the live before that one. My last live before this one was, but I know what you're talking about, was the roster conversation we had, which was Saturday. You talking about the Friday live stream, the what in the Major Tutty is going on stream. Yeah. Your man's was definitely on cloud nine. Hey, kids, don't do drugs. Anyway, I digress. Y'all have a great night. Y'all know what it is. Post up. take command. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to chopping it up with you tomorrow. We'll see what day 12 of camp has in store for the good guys. We'll talk about any developments there. I know they'll ask Ron about the unofficial depth chart. He'll say we had nothing to do with it and deflect. And we'll keep it pushing. So Friday can't get here fast enough. I'll just say that. And the beauty is we'll get a little bit of professional tackle football on Thursday to wet the palate. It won't be our guys, but that'll get you lathered up. And then Friday, we'll be here. And we'll be talking about seeing the good old burgundy and gold take the field on the road against the Cleveland Browns, kicking this season off. And boy, I cannot wait. Bart Scott can't wait. Until then, you guys have a good one. God bless. And as always, good night.